Hey, good morning. Michael DDA here. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for joining us today. We're going through Deuteronomy 31. You know, there's only 34 chapters in Deuteronomy. We're almost done. Woohoo! We're going to go through a little bit of Joshua before we start in Genesis again, but we're almost done with Deuteronomy. I'm so excited. Well, as usual, we always have to understand the things that we read in the context of where they're at. That said, I want to go all the way back to I have Deuteronomy 28. I'm going to go even further back to Deuteronomy 5. The Ten Commandments. Here it is. I'm used to looking at Exodus. Yehovah says, I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Remember, that's the context clues for the Ezra men. I am Yehovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. That's what I want you to see. Everything that we learn is about what? It's about Yehovah's instructions for the men who came out of Egypt. Not giving any of his instructions to the men in Egypt. The ones who still have covenants with Pharaoh, Obama, the Prime Minister, President Zuma, and all the other Elohim of the earth. He says, you shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. No Elohim existing before my face. What is an Elohim? We don't get it. We think an Elohim is one of those carved images. And you tell yourselves, I'm not worshiping an Elohim. Well, yes, you are. The second commandment is what you're confusing with the first commandment. The first commandment says, you shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. The second one says, you shall not make for yourself carved images. Bow down to them, serve them. Okay, we confuse the first commandment with the second commandment. But what's an Elohim? And what is worship? We don't get it. An Elohim is the lawmakers and judges. Okay, remember, we've got two kinds of Elohim. This word Elohim right here where it says, you shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. I'm reading it to you as what it says in the Hebrew, not what it says in the perverted English here of the New King James. That Elohim, where it's translated as gods, and I am Yehovah, your Elohim, is the same word. They're both plural. But the second one, is multiple Elohim, multiple lawmakers and judges. And the one that says, I am Yehovah, your Elohim, is the exalted, the plural of grandeur. We call it the qualitative. Thank you. Sheila, you're a lifesaver. The qualitative versus the quantitative plural. The second one, you shall have no other Elohim existing before my face, is the second one. you shall have no other Elohim existing before me is the quantitative plural. The first one, verse 6, I am Yehovah, your Elohim, is the qualitative plural. It's the plural of grandeur. The Elohim on the mountain, the Elohim of Elohim. Well, the Elohim don't know it yet, but soon Yehovah is going to raise up new Elohim on the earth. El on the earth. People like me. And they're going to be his representatives. And then he is going to be Elohim of Elohim. Well, remember what I said, a lawmaker and judge is an Elohim. Lawmakers make statutes and ordinances. Judges make judgments. Our Elohim gives us statutes and ordinances and judgments. And that's where we're at in Deuteronomy 28. Look what it says. Now it shall come to pass if you diligently obey, Shema, Shema, and the voice of Yehovah, your Elohim. Remember, he's talking to the Ezra men, not the ladies, not the ger, not the children, not the servants. They all obey the Ezra man. To observe carefully all his commandments, which I command you today, that Yehovah, your Elohim, will set you high above all nations of the earth. That's why I say we're going to be the Elohim of the nations. But don't be deceived. Many people will read this first verse and they build their doctrines and traditions based on one verse and say, his commandments. And so what do they think? They think his 10 commandments. And of course, they haven't a clue what the 10 commandments actually means. The very first one. I am Yehovah who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Have they come out of the land of Egypt? That's not even a commandment. That's a statement. The next one's a commandment. You shall have no other Elohim existing before my face. But again, we think commandments. We're always looking for excuses not to obey Yehovah. Well, look at the curses. We got to go down to 15 to see the curses. But it says, but it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of Yehovah, your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments and his statutes, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. So now we've got commandments and statutes. But I believe if we go down even further, let's see if it does. As I recall, it did. No, I guess we're going to have to see it someplace else, where I was going to spell out statutes and judgments and ordinances. Let's go to now. Remember, who's he giving these to? The men, the Ezra men. The ones who came out of Egypt. The ones who separated themselves. Well, they came out of Egypt. They separated themselves from Pharaoh, his covenants with them. And then at Passover, came into covenant with Yehovah and became this Ezra man, the one born in the land. These are the blessings and the cursings for these men. The world, the Gentile, is already cursed. It's not going to go well for them ever. But now we're looking at 29. He says, these are the words of the covenant. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, this is so amazing. You know, we just don't see things like this. Look at this. There's two words that Yehovah apparently gave to Moses. Listen to what it says. These are the words of the covenant which Yehovah commanded Moses to make with Israel's seed in the land of Moab. Land of Moab is 40 years after Sinai. He says, separate from the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. Where's Horeb? Remember, the Horeb is the rock of Horeb. It's in front of Sinai. This is the covenant which he made at them at Sinai. This is where the Elohim on the mountain resides. But listen to what he says. Here we are. We have lived, we men, the sons of all the men who wouldn't lead their families into Canaan 40 years earlier. These sons saw what it says. Now Moses called all Israel. He's talking about these sons, these new leaders of their families. They're all less than 60 years old. 60 years old or less. It says, now Moses called all Israel. Remember, he only talks to the Ezra men. And said to them, you have seen all that Yehovah did before your eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his servants and to all his land. The great trials which your eyes have seen, the signs and the wonders, the great wonders. Listen what he says. Yet Yehovah has not given you a heart to perceive, eyes to see, ears to hear, to this very day. Folks, most of the people who call themselves Yehovah's people, Christians, Messianics, Jews, don't have hearts that perceive, eyes that see, ears to hear, to this very day. He knew that we were an unfaithful lot. You know, I think this is the difference between the first covenant and the second covenant. We always talk about the second covenant. Remember, the second covenant is the same covenant. It's just written in your heart now. He's not giving you a heart to perceive. It's not about blood. These guys had the blood, but they didn't have the heart. Moses knew that they were going to leave. Well, let's just go down to the bottom. He said, the secret things belong to Yehovah, our Elohim. Again, code word. Who's he talking to? He's talking to the Ezra men, and he's including himself. Our Elohim. But those things that are revealed belong to us and our sons forever, that we may do all the words of this law. Our sons, not our children. The good news that a Gentile can become a son of Elohim. The good news about how we are to live our lives to receive the blessings instead of the curses belong to us. They're revealed by Yehovah. I found many of them. the secret things. I'm trying to teach it to all of you. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. The secret things belong to Yehovah, our Elohim. But those things which are revealed to us and our sons forever, us, the Ezra men, the spiritually born men, the ones who have eyes that see, ears that hear, and hearts that perceive. We're going to see there's a difference between these guys who we brought into the land of Canaan after 40 years of discipline, and us that he's raising up in these last days that willingly serve only him with all our hearts and soul and strength. Then we went to chapter 30. We covered chapter 30 last week as well. Talking about the blessings and the cursing. Now it shall come to pass, when all these things come upon you, the blessings and the curse, which I have set before you, thee, and thou call them to mind. Remember, this is talking to each man, the yellow. And thou calls them to mind among all the nations where Yehovah, thy Elohim, drives you. They're talking to us, you guys. And you return, and thou return to Yehovah, thy Elohim, and obey his voice according to all that I command thee today. Thee and thy sons, with all your heart and with all your soul. Thou and thy sons, that Yehovah, thy Elohim, will bring you back from captivity. Oh my goodness, you guys, you don't see the captivity because you grew up in Babylon. Virgin daughters of Babylon. We can't see it because we don't know the Torah. We can't see what could be. But if we could see what could be, what I see every day, your heart would cry out, save us! Deliver us! Israel doesn't ask for a license to do anything. Doesn't ask the world for permission to do a thing. We take all these things for granted. We think that we're doing Yehovah a service by obeying the laws of the land. Oh my God, forgive us. We are to have no other Elohim besides you. But look what he says. And thou return to Yehovah, thy Elohim, and obey his voice, according to all that I command thee today, thou and thy sons, with all thy heart and with all thy soul. Remember, it's not about ladies. Ladies obey their men. Yehovah's men obey him. Their sons will learn to obey him as well. He says that Yehovah, thy Elohim, will bring you back from captivity. Woohoo! No longer will they say, great is Yehovah who brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt. But great is Yehovah who brought Israel's seed out of all the places where he has scattered them. bringing the Gentiles out. He's bringing Israel's seed out. And have compassion on thee, and gather thee again from all the nations. They're not in the nations. They're from the nations. But they're not the nations. Where Yehovah thy Elohim has scattered you. I want to go to a verse. Let's go to Isaiah 43. This was a prophecy. I've only received one message, I guess, from another person to me. It was years ago, right after I lost my family. And it was actually in the Messianic church. But this woman came forward. She says, I have been fighting with Yehovah for 6 months. I did not want to give you this, but he told me over and over and over again that I got to give this to you. This is what it says. But now, thus says Yehovah, who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Israel. Remember, Jacob's the man of the flesh, Israel's the man of the spirit. Fear not, for I have redeemed you, Israel. I have called you by your name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, remember, what waters are we talking about? The waters of this world, the strength of this world. The waters always represent the flesh, the strength of the world. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. You shall not be overcome by them. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. For I am Yehovah, probably says, thy Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. Let's check it, see if it's a thy or a thee. Easy to do. You just got to go to the New King James, or the King James, rather. Thy. For I am Yehovah, thy Elohim. He's talking to each man as from man individually. For I am Yehovah, thy Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, thy Savior. I gave Egypt for thy ransom, Ethiopia and Seba in thy place. Were precious, since thou were precious in my sight. Thou has been honored, and I have loved thee. Therefore I give men for thee, and people for thy life. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy descendants from the east. Thy descendants. Are we talking about flesh descendants? Or is it possible that we're talking about spiritual descendants? Remember, he's talking to the spiritual man, Israel, the one that he redeemed from the earth, the one that he calls by name. You are mine, thou art mine. Descendants, fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy descendants from the east. Gather them from the west. I will say to the north, give them up. And to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. How does a woman become a daughter? You know what? A woman doesn't become a daughter the same way that a man becomes a son. A woman becomes a daughter by belonging to the son. That's the only way. You are he. Bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. No, ladies are not mentioned in Torah. There's just a few little places where they are mentioned. But for the most part, Yehovah never talks about our women. They're part of us. If he's talking to us, he's talking to them. We're the head. They're the flesh. But they're us. Okay, so now, let's go back to where we were. Actually, it's easier to go this way. Deuteronomy 30, verse 4. Because I want to keep reading from right here. Remember, talking about all the places where he scattered us. All the nations. He's bringing us back. He says, though thou be driven out unto the uttermost part of the heavens, thy Elohim gathers thee, and from thence he will fetch thee. He will bring you back. Then Yehovah, thy Elohim, will bring you back to the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it. He will prosper thee and multiply thee more than thy fathers. Oh man, I can't wait. Do you want to be included in this? And Yehovah, thy Elohim, will circumcise thy heart and the heart of thy seed, descendants. Oh, this is so interesting that he doesn't say sons, he says descendants. Remember, descendants is multi-generational. But these descendants are descendants that are circumcised because they are the spiritual seed. We're talking about spiritual descendants, second-born descendants. To love Yehovah, thy Elohim. That's what I wanted you to see right here. To love Yehovah, thy Elohim, with all thy heart, with all thy soul, that thou may live. This is the difference between what they had back before we crossed over the Jordan and took Canaan. They were Yehovah's people. They came from the flesh, the seed of Jacob. There were men who joined them from Egypt. But these were men primarily that were Yehovah's people by birth. Now Yehovah is raising up another people. We've been scattered among the nations for so long, we don't even know who the hell we are. We're lost and alone. But Yehovah is moving in the hearts of men even now to raise up a people for himself from out of the nations. It can be you. But you can't remain in the world and have covenants with the world and still be Yehovah's people. You want to be great? You got to come out early. I'm looking for the men who want to come out early. Not the ones who want to come out and join the men who came out early. There'll be lots that'll do that. I'm looking for leaders of those men. Your descendants, the spiritual descendants who love Yehovah with all their heart. This chapter is really unique because 3 times in this chapter it talks about loving Yehovah. Here it is again. See, I've set before you life and good, death and evil, in that I command you today to love Yehovah, thy Elohim, to walk in his ways, to keep his commandments, his statutes, his judgments. There's a good one. That you may live and multiply your spiritual seed. And Yehovah, thy Elohim, will bless thee in the land which thou goes to possess. He says it again down here in verse 20. I'm going to read it from 19. I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that thou and thy seed, remember, seed is always multi-generational, thou and thy seed may live, that thou may love Yehovah, thy Elohim, there it is, that thou may obey his voice, and that thou may cling to him, for he is thy life, and the length of thy days, and that you may dwell in the land which Yehovah swore to thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to give them. Our spiritual fathers. You know, I don't know if I have any flesh chromosomes from Abraham, but I know that I have the spiritual chromosome that makes me the heir of righteousness because of the second birth and the covenant that I have made now with Yehovah and renewed 7 times. This year is going to be the 8th time that I'm renewing my covenant with you. Well, this is where we are today. 31 is where we're beginning this morning. I know that was a little bit of an overview, long overview, but you know what? I think these overviews are important. It helps us to see. It helps us to remember. It helps us. I want to retain. I don't want to be one of those teachers that when you leave listening, you forget what he said almost immediately after you go out to the restaurant. You forget what he even talked about. How many times have you listened to a pastor preach and forgot what he talked about within an hour? Oh my goodness, I've done it so many times. What did he talk about today? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, too many times. Thanks, Tom. Right. You know, I appreciate those comments. It really helps me a lot. Yeah. Okay, so 31 is where we're going to begin today. It says, Then Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel. Who's he speaking to? Israel. You know what? When you see Israel, you've got to understand he's not talking to the men and the women and the children and the servants and the Ger. He's talking to the Ezra men. You've got to get this. I know it's a brain cramp because we have seen and understood these things for so long, we can't get it. But there are no ladies who are Israel unless they're married to Israel, unless they're servants of Israel. But all they are is Israel's women and Israel's servants, Israel's children, and the Ger who dwells with them. Israel is the spiritually born man. He says this, talking to Israel. And he said to them, I tried to put it in green. Remember, green is always the plural. He. Talking to them, second person masculine plural. He starts out with that, but he's going to switch over to the second person masculine singular in verse Well, in the middle of this verse right here, he says, he said to them, I am 120 years old today. Oh, remember last week we talked about this whole business about today. 50 sometimes it talks about today in Deuteronomy. Today is the time that he's speaking the words of Yehovah in Moab. Today. Well, now, finally, we find out what actually makes today special. Look at what it says. I am 120 years old today. I can no longer go out and come in. Remember, one of the blessings was you should be blessed going out. You should be blessed coming in. I can no longer go out and come in. He is getting old. I suggested last week that because there is so much in Deuteronomy that he wrote today that does not agree with his instructions, Yehovah's instructions given to us through Moses at Sinai, at Horeb, that may be because Moses is getting old. I wonder if he has become slightly addled. You know, it's hard to remember all of Yehovah's instructions, ordinances, judgments. And I wonder if some of these things were given to us incorrectly. Man, I hate to say something like that. And I gave a whole bunch of reasons for saying that last week. Okay, we have got to understand those reasons. But regardless, these instructions are for when we're in the land, not outside the land. These instructions, right or wrong, are for when we're in the land. You know what? Soon we are going to be in the land again. Look what it says in Isaiah 52. I think it's verse 8. Isaiah has a wealth of information. Look what it says here. Your watchmen, right here, let me scroll at the top. Your watchmen shall lift up their voices. With their voices they shall sing together. For they shall see eye to eye when Yehovah brings back Zion. This is what we're talking about. The second deliverance from Egypt when Yehovah brings back Zion. When these men are raised up, they're going to see eye to eye. They're going to know exactly when the feast starts. They're going to know exactly how to say Yehovah's name. All these things in the Messianic congregations that are fought over and divided are all going to be made clear. These men, the watchmen, the ones who are going to lead the people, are the ones who came into covenant with Yehovah, and he set them apart and made them his shalach, his sent one. They speak for him. And we're going to know exactly from them what to do in the millennial kingdom, because they're going to be the kings, the El in the kingdom, the ones who lay out Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances. Let's go back. No longer come in or go out. He says, Yehovah, your Elohim crosses before you. Oh, here, I was just talking about the Shalak. Well, look what it says here. This is so interesting. Yehovah, your Elohim, himself crosses over before you. He will destroy these nations before thee. It's actually thee. Yehovah, thy Elohim, crosses over before thee. Each man. Remember, the ladies don't go over. They're going to stay back on the east side. He will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt dispossess them. Now listen to what he says. This says Yehovah thy Elohim himself crosses over before you. Now it says Joshua himself crosses over before you. Same words. Before thee. Just as Yehovah has said. Is it possible that Joshua, well, I know he is, his Shalak, his sent one. Remember, what Joshua says, Yehovah says. What Joshua does, Yehovah does. The decisions Joshua makes are Yehovah's decisions. Remember, there's some, even Yeshua said there were some coming that were going to do greater things than he. Well, these are they. I found out something really interesting. I think it might even be in this verse. Let's see. Let me just read you the notes that I have for this verse. No, I don't want to do this verse. I've just put Joshua is Yehovah Shalak. Let's go on. And Yehovah will do to them, who's the them? The nations that he's coming to dispossess, as he did to Sihon and Og, the kings of the Amorites, and their land, when he destroyed them. Everyone died, man, woman, child, everyone. Then Yehovah will give them over to you, Yah, that you may do to them according to every commandment which I command you all. What is the commandment? I just said it. To kill them, cut them. Not rashak. Remember, it says, thou shalt not rashak. We're not talking about murder. We're talking about killing them, wiping them off the face of the earth. This is what we are going to do in the last days when Yehovah raises up Israel. They are going to come against us. And when they come against us, the forces of this world, the floods of this world, that is going to become license for us to go after them. And it shall be, here it says, right here. But, this is Deuteronomy 20. But all the cities of these peoples which Yehovah thy Elohim gives thee as an inheritance, thou shalt let nothing that breathes remain alive. Thou shalt utterly destroy them, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, the American, the Spaniards, the English, the South Africans. They're all going to perish from the earth in these last days. Lest they teach y'all to do according to all their abominations which they have done for their Elohim, their lawmakers and judges, President Obama, the Prime Minister, President Zuma, and all the other Elohim of the earth. And you sin against Yehovah, your Elohim. He goes on. Be strong and of good courage. Who is he talking to here? He's talking to the Israel man, the Ezra, yes. Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid of them, for Yehovah thy Elohim, he is the one who goes with thee. He's repeating himself. We just saw that right up here. Yehovah, your Elohim himself crosses over before you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Then Moses called to Joshua. So now, first he's talking to the Ezra men. Now Moses calls to Joshua and said to him in the sight of the Ezra men, Israel, tells him exactly the same thing. Be strong and of good courage, for you must go with this people. Which people? Israel people. Yeah, their servants are going to go with them. The Ger are going to go with their Ger are going to go with them. But it's Israel that he's talking to. It's Israel that's going to take the land. It's Israel that's going to dwell in the land. Their women, their children, the Ger who dwells with them, and the servants are going to dwell in their gates. But it's their land. For you must go with this people to the land which Yehovah has sworn to their fathers to give them. And thou shalt cause them to inherit it. Who's going to inherit it? The Ezra men. I want to stay on this, be strong and very courageous. What does it mean to be strong and of good courage? What does that mean? He uses it 3 times in this chapter. 1, 2, where's the other one? There it is right there. 3 times in this chapter he talks about being strong and of good courage. Here is in Joshua 1, 6 through 9. Let me read that to you. He says, be strong and of good courage, for to this people thou shalt divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers. Okay, we're talking about the Ezra men, the people, their fathers. This is Moses. It can't be Moses. It must be Yehovah talking to Moses at this point. Moses is dead. Or talking to Joshua at this time. Moses is dead. Only be strong and courageous. What does it mean to be strong and courageous? Look what it says. Be very strong. Yeah, Carrie says, only be very strong and courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded thee. Hear that? It takes strength. Be strong and courageous. It takes strength, conviction of the heart to tell people the truth, which is so contrary to the doctrines and traditions of men that they've already accepted as true. You follow me? On my Facebook today, I want to go to my Facebook page. Thanks, I appreciate that. John? He says yes. Look what I put on my Facebook page today. I guess I gotta refresh it. That's last week's Facebook page. Here it is. I put join us for Sabbath. Who actually goes to and participates in the feasts of Yehovah? Men, their women, single women, children, servants. How about Gentiles? Do Gentiles go and keep the feasts of Yehovah? Well, in the Messianic kingdom they do. The perverted Messianic feasts that we have, they do. Who teaches at these feasts? You will not find the truth at the place you keep your feasts, because they need to teach a broad road theology in order to fill the chairs. Well, I'm not going to name any names. I know there's a place where I used to go to Sukkot that they uninvited me. They sent me a note. We don't want you to come to our feast this year, Mr. DDA. This is what happens. They cast you out, not knowing that they're separating the righteous from the wicked. That's what it says, Isaiah 57. Even John 16 talks about casting you out of the synagogues, thinking they're doing Elohim a favor. Yeah, they're ear ticklers. That's exactly right. Yeah, Tom, that's exactly what I'm saying. Butts in the seat. That's what they want. Butts in the seat. Yeah, they pick teachers who draw crowds. Ear ticklers. Be strong and very courageous. This is what I'm talking about. I'm strong. I'm courageous. Okay? Because I'm talking about myself. I'm not prideful. I mean, look where I live. This is my house. This is where I spend all my day. It's 8 feet by 12 feet. That's my house. I live on $350 a month. How many people do that? I'm not prideful. I got nothing to be prideful of. But I know my Father's ways. I know how a man can become great in his kingdom. And he just told us right here how to do it. That you may observe to do all the law, all the Torah, which Moses, my servant, commanded thee. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. This book of Torah shall not depart from your mouth, but thou shalt meditate in it all day, that thou may observe to do according to all that is written in it. For then thou wilt make thy way prosper. Do you want to prosper? Well, you know what? You're probably not going to prosper in this kingdom. I mean, David even complained about it. Why do the wicked prosper, Father? But the day is coming that we are going to see things change. I gotta remember to keep this up higher. And then thou wilt have good success. Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid. Do not be dismayed, for Yehovah thy Elohim is with thee wherever thou goes. You know, it's so easy to just make this about strength in battle, isn't it? But it's not about strength in battle. Yehovah's going to fight for us. It's more about strength and conviction in making yourself 100% Yehovah's man. Yeah, moral courage, Sheila says. Yes, it's going to go beyond that. And we're going to see some of that today yet. Because remember, those that wait upon Yehovah are going to renew their strength. Here, David says, and David said to his son Solomon, be strong and of good courage, and do it. Do not fear or be dismayed, for Yehovah Elohim, my Elohim, will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you until you have finished all the work for the service of the house of Yehovah. So here's Solomon's being commanded to be strong and courageous. But he didn't go into battle. No, he had peace. He was responsible for dividing Israel, but he had peace from his enemies at that time. But he's still being told to be strong and of good courage. You know, it takes conviction of heart to tell people the truth. Sometimes when I'm writing people, I have to be bold. I have to say things that most people would never tell them. And I'd say probably 50% of the time I'm going to be received well, and 50% of the time I'm going to get somebody who just says, "Who the heck are you that you're going to tell me this?" They don't want to know it. They don't want the truth. They like the lies. He goes on. Talking about giving us the land is what we just talked about. You shall cause them to inherit it. Who inherits the land? The Ezra men. The only ones that get the land. Okay? Why do I talk about the Ezra men? Because Yehovah talks about the Ezra men all the time. Yet, what teacher of Torah ever talks about the Ger and the Ezra? The two men that make up Israel. The Ezra are Israel, and the Ger are the men who dwell with them, who will at Passover become Israel. I don't know anybody that talks like that. G-E-R. G-E-R, Tom. Yeah. Well, the Ger, remember, a Gentile, there's no Gentiles in Yehovah's kingdom. When a Gentile repents, leaves the kingdom of his birth, joins himself to Israel's people, they are now a Ger. They're the Ger who dwell within their gates. Only two kinds of men. One law shall be for the native born and for the Ger who dwells with you. The Ezra and the Ger who dwell with you. One law forever throughout your generations. All right. 9. No. 8. And Yehovah, he is the one who goes before you, before thee. He will be with thee. He will not leave thee, nor forsake thee. Do not fear, nor be dismayed. No, he is going to battle. You know what? When Yehovah raises up Israel, people like me, people like Carrie, and others who are coming into covenant with him right now, we will be the ones who are going to lead those who come to us. In a sense, he's talking to us, or he will talk to us, as he's talking to Joshua right now. Reminding us, Yehovah, he is the one who goes with us. He will be with us, each one of us. He will not leave us nor forsake us. Do not fear nor be dismayed. Well, now we have a change. It says Moses wrote this Torah and delivered it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who bore the ark of the covenant of Yehovah, and he delivered it to all the elders of Israel. The elders of Israel. Who are the elders of Israel? Lady elders? Men elders. They're men, Ezra elders. That's why they're the elders of Israel. They're Israel. This law. Moses wrote this law and delivered it to the priests. I think that there was much written before. I think Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers were all written before this, because it talked about doing it separate. This is what he's given him in Moab. to give to us. Let me just read you a couple things here. This is Deuteronomy 31:24-26. So it was, when Moses had completed writing the words of this Torah in a book, when they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites, who bore the Ark of the Covenant. Oh, this is what we're reading right now. No, it's not what we're reading right now. What's that? Yeah, well, it's another dozen verses. Take this book of the law, put it beside the Ark of the Covenant of Yehovah. I don't know if it's thy Elohim or your Elohim, that it may be there as a witness against thee. I'm going to say thee. No, well, that's a good point. I think that remember, there's rulers of tens, 50s, hundreds, thousands. 500s, thousands, I forget what it is. I think those are the elders that we're really talking about. Each man is going to rule in his own gate. In a sense, he's the elder of the gate. But there's elders of elders. So we got to kind of keep that in mind. Within the gates, each man who has a gate. If I had a gate, remember, Abraham had a gate. He had a large group of people with him, multi-generational people, not only his seed. The men who joined themselves to him were his men born in his house, his servants. But within those gates, he had elders and people who the scriptures talk about all the time, the men who are within the gates. They are the El. They're the El, the gods. It would be translated as gods, but they change it because they don't want to say gods. Again, they're deceptive. They don't want to give you the truth so that you understand that an Elohim is the person who's the lawmaker and the judge. He's the one that rules over you. Because then we'd realize that we've got Obama ruling over us, and governors ruling us, and legislatures and congresses ruling over us. And they don't want people to know that. But when it talks about the elders that are ruling in your gate, oftentimes it's the Elohim that are ruling within your gates. The El. The God that's ruling within your gates. So there's different levels of people that we would be talking about. Here's another one. This is Exodus 19:9. And Yehovah said to Moses, behold, I come to you in a thick cloud. Oh, you know what? Whenever Yehovah shows up, it's always in a cloud. Always in a cloud. That the people may hear when I speak with you. Who are the people? The people are the Ezra men. When I speak with you and believe in you forever. Here's Yehovah talking to Moses, saying that the people are to believe in him. What have we been taught? Believe in Jesus. But he's saying, believe in Moses. Oh, the lies we have learned. We are to believe in Moses. There was not a word of all Moses had commanded which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel. Look at what it says. Oh, this is so good because it's transitioned so well into what we're going to see here in the next few verses. Watch this carefully. It says, there was not a word of all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel. Now, they put a comma. Look what it says, though. It says, with the women. And what does it say? What does that say? It tells me that the women are not Israel. They're Israel's women. You see what's going on here? How about all the assembly of Israel? it doesn't say with the men. It says with the women. It says the little ones and the ger who are living around, gerim who are living among them. That's the ger, plural form, gerim. The gerim who are living among them, living within their gates. But who do you command? All the assembly of Israel, spiritually born men, the Ezra men. Well, now keep that in mind because we're going to see things here that are going to be very interesting for us below. Here's verse 10. And Moses commanded them. Who's them? Well, it's actually not. I think it is. I think he's still talking to these guys here, the priests and the elders of Israel. That's what it looks like to me. Moses wrote this law and delivered it to the priests. Then it tells you who the priests are, the sons of Levi who bore the ark before the covenant of Yehovah, and all the elders of Israel. Okay, you got to kind of understand it and read it differently. You know what? Don't trust the punctuation in Torah. No matter what you're reading. Remember, Torah doesn't have punctuation. It has a colon at the end of a thought periodically. But that's it. That's the only punctuation that there is. So now it says, and Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time, in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles. Oh my goodness, this is so good to help us understand when the year of Jubilee is. What time are the people being set free? This is in the 7th year, at the appointed time. What's the appointed time? The Moed. The Feast of Tabernacles. In the year of release. The year of release is the 7th year. Are they released? Well, here, let's talk about this year of release for a moment. Here it says in Deuteronomy 15, verse 1. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts. Bad debts. But I think it's right just because of the next verse. And this is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother. Now, his neighbor or his brother. Who are we talking about? Are we talking about the Gentiles? If he's loaned money to the Gentiles, is he going to forgive the debt? Well, ridiculous. Of course he's not. But if he's lent it to Israel, his neighbor, who's his neighbor? The one who dwells with him, that's the ger. Or his brother, who's the brother? The Ezra. Remember, he's talking to the Ezra men when he's giving these instructions. He's going to release it in this year. So if you loan money to somebody in the 5th year, 2 years from now, it's going to be forgiven. So when you borrow money, you do it based on the amount of time that's left before the year of release. But now I want you to see something because this is going to impact some of the things we're going to read later. It says this. This is Exodus 21, verse 1. Now we're still talking about the 7 year in the year of release, okay? What gets released in the 7th year? We just talked about debts being released in the 7th year, but there's something else that's going to be released in the 7th year. Now these are the judgments which you shall set before them. This is a judgment. If you buy a Hebrew servant, okay? This is an Ebrei Aved. I know it looks like a bed. It's Aved. They just don't know how to read it. A Hebrew, Ibri Aved is what we're talking about. A male servant. A servant. There are no lady servants that are men. There are no lady Aved. He shall serve 6 years. Well, look what it says. He shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th year he shall go out free and pay nothing. Well, so does that mean that as soon as he comes to you, it starts the 7-year count? No. You get that idea the way they translate it, but I put, he shall serve you 6 years maximum. He's going out in this year of release. The year of release doesn't change at all. It's always the same year. It's a joyous year. It's the year that we aren't doing any work because the land is even resting in that year. The year of release. In the 7th year, he shall go out free and pay nothing. If he comes in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he comes in married, ba'ald is the word that they're using there, then his woman shall go out with him. If his master has given him a woman, and she has borne him sons and daughters, the woman and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. Hear that? The lady does not go out in the year of release. Oh my goodness. We saw just recently that the male servant and the female servant go out in the year of release. We saw that in 15. And we talked about it when we went through Deuteronomy 15. But let me keep reading because I want you to see this. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my Adonai, my woman, my Toph. No, it's actually not even Toph. It's sons, my son. I love my son. I will not go out free. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. There it is right there. The judges, the Elohim of the city. He shall also bring him to the door or to the doorposts. And his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Now, if he serves him forever, all his descendants are the masters. Almost like servants in Yehovah's kingdom. Boy, I hate to say this, but it's so true. They're almost like livestock. Does that sound unkind? I know it does, doesn't it? But wait until you see what a single woman is like in Yehovah's kingdom. Then you'll think I'm really being unkind. See, we don't know Yehovah's ways. We hear things and we think, oh, well, that's not politically correct. Yeah, Sheila says property. That's exactly what we're talking about, their property. Let me keep reading. He shall serve him forever. And if a man sells his daughter. So here's a man selling his daughter to be a female slave, a female servant. And I forget if it's Alma or Amma, one of the two. I forget which one it is right now. Half-timers, I think. If a man sells his daughter to be a female servant, they put slave. Listen what it says. She shall not go out as the male servants do. Do you see what's going on here? Difference between a man and a woman. Now, Deuteronomy will tell you that this woman, this female servant, does go out. Well, it's wrong. That is not going to happen. So, this is the year of release, the appointed time. It's at Tabernacles. The year of release happens at the appointed time at Tabernacles, not at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of the 7th year. It is at the Feast of Tabernacles that it's called the year of release because the release happens at Tabernacles. Okay, this is going to be important because it's going to affect the Jubilee as well, the Jubilee year. Let's continue. When at the year of, so we got to understand this in the same context. I'm going to read from 31:10 again. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before Yehovah, thy Elohim. Okay, I put it in both. Still talking to the priests, still talking to the elders, but thy Elohim, he's talking about their Elohim. In the place which he chooses, thou shalt read the law before all Israel in their hearing. Okay, so who's reading it? Does all Israel know how to read? I'm guessing not. Does all Israel have a Torah? Well, of course not. That's why we got to give it to them every year. So now, the thou, who is either a priest or an elder, I'm guessing it's probably a priest, is going to read the law before all Israel in their hearings. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Let me pull this up. I believe I must have put it down here. Again, punctuation, punctuation, punctuation. It changes everything. You know, and I hate to use a New Testament verse, but I'm going to use it because I want to make a point. It talked about the man, the thief who repented, who supposedly died with Yeshua. Okay? And he said, today you shall be with, or I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise. I say to you, today, today you shall be with me in paradise. See, now we got the idea that when we die, we're going to go to heaven, don't we? But that doesn't line up with anything that is in the law and the prophets. But if we put the comma in a different place, but I say to you today, comma, you will be to me with me in paradise. You see how it makes a complete difference in our understandings? And this is what happens with the people who translate the scriptures. They can affect your understandings by changing a word here and there to agree with their theology, and by changing punctuation. Oh my goodness, punctuation is so important for us to understand. Oh, I had to work so hard to see what I found here in this portion. Look at what it says in the New King James first. Gather the people together. Gather the people together. I put red there. When I put red in my Bible, it's because something is wrong added. If it's in a blank space, it probably means something's missing. There's a problem there. It says, gather the people together, men and women and little ones, and the stranger who is within thy gates. Gather the people. Who are the people? This understanding would have us believe that the people is who? Men, women, little ones, strangers. Isn't that what the people would be? Okay? This is why I read you the thing in Joshua, because I wanted you to see this. He's talking to who? All Israel in their hearing. See what's going on? The confusion that gets generated? We have to go into the Hebrew to see it. And we have to understand that the punctuation has been screwed up to let you think you're something you're not. Let's take a look at this carefully. He says, gather together the people. Here's what I did. I used this, what do I call that? A hatch mark? This thing right here. A hatch mark? It's a dash. It could be even used as a colon. I probably could have used a colon there, but I wanted to show where it ended. Anyway, a dash. Gather together the people. Okay, they have the people. Gather the people. Assemble the people is really what the Hebrew is saying. Assemble ha'am, the people. Okay, period. Stop thinking. Now this is what Yehovah often does. We've seen it all through the Torah. He will give us the big picture, and then he's going to break it on down. This is breaking it on down. Gather together the people. Remember, he's talking to all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people. What people? All your people. Israel, assemble your people. In the 7th year, at the appointed time, in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles. Who are the people? Well, here's what it says. They just say men, women, little ones. But look what it actually says. It says the men, enoshim, the men, and the women, the nashim, nashim, the women, and taf, the children, the little ones. But now look what it says, and this is what got my attention. They put the stranger who is within your gates. The stranger who is within thy gates. Well, how come it talks about the stranger instead of thy stranger? I went and looked, and sure enough, it says thy stranger. Here it is right here. And this says and, this vav. The ger is the gimel and the resh. And then the kaf here at the end says thy ger. Gather together thy ger. This is them, probably the priest, who's going to read the law, commanding us, Israel's seed, to bring all our people. The men people who dwell within our gates. The women people who dwell within our gates. The children people who dwell within our gates. And thy ger. Okay? The thy gives it up. That's where we can see the truth of it. Because now we know it's about thy men, thy woman, thy children, thy ger, thy gates. You see what's going on? The people. Gather the people. You could say gather thy people. You know what? I would really like to have Joe and people who are talking with Joe stop so that we can stay on task, because you're going to distract from what I'm saying. Joe's question didn't really have anything to do with what we were discussing here. I want us to stay on task. Will you do that for me? This is important stuff. I'm trying to give you life. And if you're a Gentile, and this is talking about thy ger, and bringing thy men and thy women and thy servants, he's not talking to you. This is why you need to become the Ezra. Do you understand what I'm saying? He's talking about thy gates. This is talking about gather together thy people is the understanding that we have from this. But because of the perversion here in the New Testament, or the New King James Version, we can't see the truth. You know what? Remember I said earlier today, there is hardly any time in the Torah where Yehovah includes women. How am I doing on time? 12:36. I guess I don't have time to take a hiatus. If you have my notes, I want you to read this note right here. I believe it's called Where? Oh, no, it's women. W-O-M-E, women. Women. Where is she? I got a bunch of verses that talk about why it never talks about where the women are. It doesn't talk about women. Yehovah doesn't talk to women. He can't talk to your woman. He'd be usurping your authority. Well, I found multiple places in the scriptures where you can see that it's not there. Here, I'll give you one. I want to use this one right here with Israel coming out of Egypt. Then Israel's seed journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot. About 600,000 Gabor on foot. Besides children, a mixed multitude. That's besides the Toph. A mixed multitude, that's the ger that are going with them, went up with them also flocks and herds. Okay? There's no women being even mentioned. Why? Because they belong, they're the property of the man. Well, you'll see this over and over and over and over. And this is one time, this portion that we're reading right now is one time where the women are enumerated. Very important for us to understand this. He goes on. And that they shall hear. Who's the they? The they is now all these women, men. Remember, we have men who are in our gates. Other Ezra men. I think this relates a little bit to Tom's question earlier about only the Ezra men being the elders. There's some merit to that question, really. Because that's what I said, it depends. If you're talking about the gate, he's the elder of the gate. He's the Israel that we're talking about right now. And these men, remember, the ger at Passover becomes the Ezra, doesn't he? Well, when the ger becomes the Ezra, well, he's not the ger who dwells with you anymore. He's the Ezra who dwells with you. But he's still dwelling with you. He doesn't get his own gate because he's not going to be given any land. He has to go away from you and start his own gate. You follow me? Then he can be the Ezra of the gates. But, well, he's with you. He's just an Ezra man. You have Ezra men, sons, who have been circumcised and have come with you to eat the Passover. I consider them Ezra men as well. But they aren't the leaders of the gates. They're still part of the little ones, aren't they? He says, that they may learn to fear Yehovah, your Elohim. Okay, there's another context clue to help us understand that when we're talking about Israel, they're not talking about the women, not talking about children, not talking about the ger. We're talking about the men who have Yehovah as their Elohim. Yah's Elohim. And carefully observe all the words of the law and their sons. Whose sons? the Ezra men's sons, their sons, who do not know the Torah. I added the Torah, who do not know is all it says. That they may hear and learn to fear Yehovah, your Elohim, as long as you live in the land which you shall cross over the Jordan to possess. Ladies, don't possess the land. Garrett, don't possess the land. Children, don't possess. Servants, don't possess. The Ezra possess the land. Okay, so do you see why it's important that I showed you this verse up here in... Yeah, here it is right here. There was not a word at all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel. See how they're saying it here? This is what we're talking about in the current verse that we're going through. With the women, the little ones, and the strangers who were living among them. Okay? I don't even think in this particular verse that we're going through now in verse 12, I don't think, he may be, but I don't even think he's talking about the servants when he says the men and the women. I got a hunch. You know, he could be. It could be servants. Maybe if they all have to appear before Yehovah at the place that he puts his name in the 7th year, who is going to take care of the farm? Who's going to take care of the gates? Hired servants could take care of the gates. But I got a hunch that it's not the servants who are going to take care of the gates. When he talks about the women, I think he's talking about the nashim. Remember, men have, well, we see it all the time. People don't want to acknowledge it, but we're talking about the nashim, the women, and the pelagashim, the concubines. The concubines. Those would be women from the servant quarters who have become intimate with the master. That's the pelagesh. Pelagashim is the plural of that. Are the pelagashim going? Well, I don't know. I think they might be going. Again, these are things that we'll discover when Yehovah raises up his watchmen and we all see eye to eye. We'll know who's supposed to go. Do the servants go? Do the Amma go? The female servants? How about the Pelagashim? They're closer to the master. Do they get to go? We don't know. We don't know. But if we look at it in the context of thy ger, is it possible that we're also talking about thy children and thy women? And they're all, we said, thy people? Well, now the Pelagashim would certainly be thy women. The servant, the Aved, would certainly be thy woman or thy man. Right? So it may be that it is the hired servant, in a sense, the Toshab, who dwells with you, the one who's working for wages, that he's the one that takes care of the land. There may be people that come from other lands for this day, for this week, to take care of our lands, because they know that they can make bank during this week if they go to Israel to take care of the homes, the gates in Israel. Take care of their... Someone's got to feed the livestock if everybody else leaves. Well, these are all things that we'll find out later on. There's not enough information. Isn't that how it is? So for so many things, there's just not enough information to be able to see all that we want to see. All right, well, let's continue then. I've kind of read some of this. And their sons who have not known it may hear and fear Yehovah, your Elohim. Sons. Here it is right here. And their sons. Okay, it looks like B'nai, but it's not B'nai, it's Banim. It's their Banim, their sons. Could be multi-generational sons, I suppose, but we're still talking about their sons. That their sons who have not known may hear and learn to fear Yehovah, your Elohim. They say your sons. That's why he says your sons, because it's your, the plural you sons. As long as you live in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. 14. All right, we're not getting anywhere fast here, but hey, we're having a good time doing it. Then Yehovah said to Moses, behold, the days approach when you must die. Here's Yehovah talking to Moses. This is not the good news of his day. Behold, the days approach when you must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the days. The days approach. It sounds to me like this is the day. Go figure. Isn't it interesting that in all this, we men, are told to fear Yehovah, not yet to love Yehovah. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, she says the men. Sorry, not we men. The men. Yeah, well, that's where it starts. It starts with the fear of Yehovah. But as we get to know Yehovah, we join ourselves to him. We become his people. And then at Passover, we become his son. We learn to love Yehovah. Obedience always starts with fear, doesn't it? The first message the 144,000 are going to bring is fear Yehovah. The hour of his judgment has come. Not love Yehovah, fear Yehovah. The hour of his judgment has come. Worship him, not the Antichrist. Antichrist. Forget that word. Put that out of your vocabulary. Not the Assyrian, not the rulers of this world. Don't love and worship them. Don't fear. Well, you don't love them. They fear them. And that's why they worship them. That's why they obey them. He's saying, fear Elohim. Give glory to him. The hour of his judgment has come. Worship him. Who created the trees and the seas and all that are in them. Or I forget exactly what it says. It's in the New Testament anyway. He says, 14, then Yehovah said to Moses, behold, the days approach when you must die. Call Joshua and present yourselves, you and Joshua, in the tabernacle of meetings, that I may inaugurate him. So Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of meetings. So now, look what it says. It seems that Moses can talk to Yehovah, but now he's going to talk with Joshua, and what does he do? He appears in the cloud again. Look at this. Now Yehovah appeared. Now Yehovah appeared at the tabernacle in a pillar of cloud. And the pillar of cloud stood above the door of the tabernacle. How do you see Spirit Elohim? This is how you see Spirit Elohim. One of my articles I just wrote called the first part, 144,000 Virgin of Israel. Who are we talking about? These servants of Elohim. We have this idea that Jesus is going to come in a cloud and all this stuff. And it's not about Yeshua. Yeshua is not coming back in a cloud, you guys. Put it out of your mind. You will not find that in Torah. You will find in several places in Torah that Yehovah himself is going to come out in a cloud. The stars are going to fall from heaven. The heavens are going to open and Yehovah will appear in a cloud. Why in a cloud? Because you can't see Spirit Elohim. He's got to be hidden inside of it. Okay? We've got to get this. It's very important. He appears in a cloud, stood above the door of the tabernacle. And Yehovah said to Moses, behold, thou wilt rest with thy fathers. And this people, the Ezra people, will rise and play the harlot with the Elohims of the foreigners of the land. Oh, that is so interesting. The Elohim of the foreigners of the land. We're talking about foreign Elohim of the land. Look what the words are. It is Elohi, comes from Elohim. The foreigners, Elohim, the Nakar, foreign Elohim. Remember, when did we hear Nakar before? Have you heard that word Nakar? Yeah, Ben Nakar. Remember, Nakar distinguishes something that's foreign. It's used as an adjective or an adverb, in this case as an adjective, to describe foreign sons. So when we talk about the Ben Nakar, we're talking about the sons of a foreigner. So when we talk about the Elohim Nakar, we're talking about who? We're talking about foreign Elohim of the land. Foreign Elohim. The Elohim of the foreigners. The foreign lands, lawmakers and judges. Play the harlot with them. Why do we wear these? Why do we wear these? Do you remember why we wear these? Well, Gary says it, to remember all the commandments. But it's more. It's to remember all the Father's statutes, judgments, and ordinances, and what? And not follow the harlotry to which our own eyes and our own hearts are inclined. Do you see what's going on? This is what we're doing here. Behold, you will rest with your fathers. Moses, thou shalt rest with thy fathers. And this people, the Ezra people, my sons, will rise and play the harlot with the Elohim of the foreign lands. The foreign lands, lawmakers and judges. We're doing it right now. We don't even know it. We don't know we're his people. Where they go to be among them, and they will forsake me and break my covenant, which I made with them. No, we're lost. We've forgotten. Then my anger shall be aroused against them in that day, and I will forsake them. I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. You know, I had a friend the other day blaming God for death. He kills all these people, not realizing that these people are being destroyed because they're not Yehovah's people. They are serving the Elohim of the land. Where they go before them, go among them, and I will forsake, and they will forsake me and break my covenant which I made with them. Then my anger will be aroused against them in that day, and I will forsake them. And I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured. He's talking to men. Again, where do the ladies who don't have a man in their life stand? I'm not going to tell you. You got to learn it. And many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, have not all these evils come upon us because our Elohim is not among us? Our Elohim is not among us. Oh, please come back to us, dear Father, Creator, Master. I will surely hide my face in that day because of all the evil which they have done, in that they have turned to other Elohim. other Elohim. Remember, he says, I am Yehovah, thy Elohim, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohim existing before my face. They've returned, and they're serving other lawmakers and judges. He's hidden his face. But now Israel is beginning to return to him. And as we leave our Elohim of this land and come into service with him, and then at Passover come in to covenant with him, he is going to renew he's going to be able to see us. He's going to show his face. I think, and I've said this many times, that we're not waiting for Yehovah to start these last days. He's waiting for us. It can happen anytime. All we have to do is step up to the plate and become his Ezra men. That's what he's waiting for. And until that happens, he's not going to come back. Now, therefore, write down this song for yourselves. Teach it to Israel's seed. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against Israel's seed. The rebellious seed, the ones who were his that left. That's who we're talking about. When I have brought them to the land flowing with milk and honey, of which I swore to their fathers, and they have eaten and filled themselves and grown fat. We think it's all about our righteousness, and we have forgotten Yehovah. We've grown fat. And they will turn to other Elohim and serve them. Do you hear this? How many times have we seen in this that he's talking about other Elohim? Grown fat, served other Elohim. Turn to them and serve them, and they provoke me and break my covenants. Then it shall be when many evils and troubles have come upon them. This song will testify against them as a witness, for it will not be forgotten in the mouths of their seed. Not their sons, their seed. We're talking about spiritual seed. For I know the inclinations of their behavior today, even before I brought them to the land to which I swore to give to them. So just as Moses was saying in the last chapter about your hard hearts, your clogged ears, and your bad eyes, he's saying the same. Yehovah is saying exactly the same thing. Therefore, let me see what my notes is here. His seed. Yeah, we're talking about when we talk about his descendants. Where was it? Here it is right here. The descendants. Their descendants. Their descendants. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, look, it says their descendants. Let me read it again. Then it shall be when evils and troubles come upon them, that this song will testify against them as a witness, for it will not be forgotten in the mouths of, it doesn't say their descendants, it says his descendant. His descendants. Isn't that interesting? His descendants? His. Who's his? It's the plural he, you guys. It is Israel's descendant. His descendant. Remember, Israel is my son, my firstborn. He's talking about true Israel. I put, oh man, this is so important that we see and understand this. Yes, the future Ezra men. That's exactly right, Tom. That's who we're talking about. For I know the inclinations of their hearts or their behavior today, even before they brought them to the land. So if he knows our behavior, or I say our behavior because I'm a Israel, I'm in Ezra. I know we were profoundly inadequate in the sight of Yehovah just before we came into the land of Canaan. But you know what? We are going to be profoundly adequate. The men who are rising up right now in the midst of captivity to serve only Yehovah, talking about strong and courageous men. Those are the ones he's looking for right now. For I know the inclinations of their behavior today, even before I brought them to the land which I swore to give to them. Therefore Moses wrote this song the same day. Again, we're talking about the day that he's going to die. And taught it to Israel's seed. Then he inaugurated Joshua, the son of Nun, and said, be strong and of good courage, for thou shalt bring Israel's seed into the land which I swore to them, and I will be with thee. I'm going to go just a little bit longer if you don't mind. I want to finish this chapter. I don't think I have too much more to say about this. Let me just read it to you. So it was. Thank you. So it was when Moses had completed writing the words of the law of this book, the words of this law in a book. When they were finished, then Moses commanded the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant of Yehovah, saying, take this book of Torah and put it beside, good word, beside, put it beside the ark of the covenant of Yehovah, your Elohim. I probably should have made that. He's talking to the Levites. I should have made that this color because I use that for their, that's Yehovah's representatives, the Levites. That it may be as a witness against thee, all of you individually, men. For I know thy rebellion and thy stiff neck. If today, while I am yet alive with you, now he's switching back to all of you, you have been rebellious against Yehovah, then how much more am I death? Gather to me the elders of your tribes, your officers, that I may speak these words in their hearing, and call heaven and earth as witness against them. Who's he calling? Men. The elders of your tribes, your officers. For I know that after my death you will become utterly corrupt, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. Are you starting to feel any evil falling around you these days? Because you will do evil in the sight of Yehovah to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. Oh, everything we do is evil. We just don't even see it. Even the meat that we eat from the stores is destroying us, and we don't get it. Read my teachings on Leviticus 17. Simple things are destroying us. The latter days. Because you will do evil in the sight of Yehovah to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. Hear that? Your thoughts? No, he didn't say provoke him to anger through your thoughts. Even though Yeshua says, I say to you, if a man thinks it in his heart, so he's done it already. Baloney! No, you provoke him to anger through the work of your hands, the things that you do. Yeve. 31, last verse. Then Moses spoke in the hearing of all the assembly of Israel. Israel, the men, the Ezra men, and the words of this song until they were ended. So now, next week, we're going to hear the Song of Moses. You know, I've heard teachers, messianic teachers, well respected teachers, respected by those who don't have a clue, don't know that there's even Ger and Ezra in Israel, don't know the role of a man, the role of a woman in Israel. They don't know any of these things. And I heard him with my own ears, saw him with my own eyes tell people that the 144,000 are going to be the men and women who can sing this song, the Law of Moses, in perfect Hebrew. Don't you know? All you got to do is learn to sing the song in perfect Hebrew. Duh. We don't get it. We listen to stupid teaching like this, and we think, oh, that's really cool. No, it's not about anything we can do in the flesh. It's about serving the Spirit Elohim, keeping His statutes, His judgments, and His ordinances. This song is a witness against us. Yes, we're supposed to learn it. We're supposed to understand it. We're going to see there's going to be some things that are problems with this song. But I think you'll find it very interesting. We're going to go through it next week. All right. Well, it is 1:08, and I've gone over time. I'm sorry for that. I did want to keep this under 2 hours. It's just doggone, I did too much of a introduction, I guess. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining me today. We will see you hopefully next week. Thank you. I love you. Please come again. Please join us live if you can. If not, I have these teachings on YouTube. You can download them from there. Well, I don't know if you can download them. You can download the audios, I think. But you can watch them on YouTube. Oh, it's really cool. I don't know if you've seen my new YouTube channel. Become a subscriber of it, please. Start learning Yehovah's ways. Soon we're going to start Genesis 1. Ooh, it's going to be so fun to start over in Genesis, knowing what we already know. Oh, you know what? When we started Genesis 1, we were still talking about the sons of Israel. Now we understand who Israel's seed is. Oh, there's so much more to see. All right. So, we'll see you next week. I love you tons.